Hey guys, and welcome to a new video. Today I want to talk about the league starter that I planned, or at least let's say the league start plans for 319 Lake of Calandra League. And to be honest, first of all, the biggest disclaimer here, okay? This is a very high experimental build. There is no proof that this is going to work in any case. It's going to use the new skills, or at least I'm going to try out the new skills, like the, what is it called, the lightning conduit. What I consider is going to be a kind of a nuke ability if you are able to sustain a very good shock effect and reapplying the shock effect, since what I know, every time you use this lightning conduit, the shock actually gets removed or like soaked up and then have a big blast of lightning damage here, right? And it's going to use some very interesting forms of defense layers as well as questionable offense layers, okay? So I do not know if this build is going to be good. I do not know if this build is actually going to be accessible early on. There are uniques in there for the final version that are not going to exist in the start. For example, Divine Flesh, you know, Glorious Vanity. Will you have that in like day 2 or day 3 of the league? Most likely not. And the first ones that are popping up usually go for a couple exalts, because there is a lot of builds that like to have a Glorious Vanity, Timeless Jewel, for example, right? That's why I say this is probably more suited as a second or even third build of the league. Once I have proven, or once I actually tried this one out, and then I can tell you guys, is it good, is it not good, is it a waste of time, and whatnot. What is the budget that I invested, what was expensive, what are like your milestones more or less to get this build going. So that's why I say use at your own risk, okay? For me personally, I don't care about league start. With that means I'm not the guy that tries to kill the Shaper within 10 hours of the league start, right? If I personally take 15 hours until I get to maps, that is totally fine for me, okay? I'm not a racer. I'm just like, I want to experiment with his new skills, and I'm not racing, okay? And I know already that in the first 3 or 4 days, I'm going to go back to one of my old builds, which is going to be my Mind Over Matter Archmage Stonebrand Raider. So I have like some footage somewhere, if I can find it. I think it's over here. So I played this build last league and like a year ago or something, and every time I play it, this is like so much fun. I think it's like so great. And based on the core mechanics, so my build is going to be a template build. It is focused around mana stacking. It's going to be Mind Over Matter. It's agnostic. And there will be other forms of defensive layers that do need higher investment, and therefore I'm gonna skip them for now, okay? I have something crazy cool planned, especially since it incorporates the negative stats of the Calandra League. So as we saw in the spoilers, we have like an item like a ring, amulet, or something, right? Where it basically splits the items in half, and 3 stats get like Omega Strong, and the other 3 stats get Omega Bad, right? And my build actually incorporates both sides to have like an eternal synergy in the entire thing, okay? But the core line of the build is going to be Mind Over Matter, agnostic, mana stacking. If it's going to be attack-based or, let's say, Archmage, like spell-based, this is still a question, right? But since my character will be a template build, that means I'm just going to swap out some gems and then see where the journey will go. Is it even going to be lightning-based, or at least on hit based? Is going to be a crit build, or even like something like Ignite, you know, Arc Ignite, or other like Hex Blast Ignite? Everything is possible. That's why I'm like so hyped about this build, because I think it's going to be amazing, hopefully. Defensive wise, it's going to be insane. I can already tell based on my stats on PUB, but offensive wise still leaves a question mark. But the new skills look actually quite ridiculous. Good. Where do we start this entire thing? So basically, I would say this is a puzzle with like 100 pieces, and I think I sorted out like 90 pieces, and I'm currently working on trying to fit in like the last 5 to 10 pieces to make this entire product to be like a very 5-head out of the meta, or thinking out of the box meta, off meta build, right? And I think it's gonna be the classic MBX build that has like 20 different mechanics built in, probably over 10 keystones, and like certain mechanics that are built in and stuff like that. And that's why I'm so hyped about the build. And this time around, I'm actually really looking forward to League Start. I always do, but usually I care about League Start once we're like on Friday and there's a couple hours left. I'm like, shit, what am I going to play on League Start, right? But this time around, I'm actually like so hyped. I'm planning my PUBs and everything up front and trying to figure things out. So, as I said, the core is going to be this build over here, right? So we have like things like Cloak of Defiance, Crown of the Inward Eye, you have a Tyr's Foible, you have like mana rings, maybe Asenaths. Like, this is like the core principle of a mana stacking build, right? But we're gonna do some adjustments to it based on how I would consider being it very strong. And it's very hard to not spoiler how I'm going to build this thing, right? Okay, let's talk about the new skills: Lightning Conduit, Overcharge, and Galvanic Field. I'm not going to talk too much about Alchemist's Mark because, like, yeah, I'm not a poison build, neither am I an ignite build in the first place. Maybe it will be, so I'm not going to use it either way. But I think I have high hopes in the Lightning Conduit. It has a ridiculous amount of base lightning damage and also an effective of added damage by 220%. If you compare this to something like Arc or anything, I think Arc has like an 80 or 90% mana effectiveness of added damage, so I think this is going to be a tactical nuke. And the way I think I'm gonna play it in the first place, this is like the core idea, right? How it's going to develop and what skills are best used in something like that. I think like if I go with Stonebrand and skipping basically all the nodes that are like Swiftbrand, for example, because I want to have my brand to be on the target as long as possible with a very high cast speed, and so it has a good frequency. To then apply shocks and pretty much hammering my Lightning Conduit, because if we're going to take a look at the skill, it has like a 0.5 cast time. The way I'm going to build it with like enormous amounts of cast speed, we're going to get this number down to probably 0.2 or something like that, or 25, doesn't matter. So I'm going to get off a couple of casts per second, but that also means I need to reapply the shock all the time, and I think Stonebrand makes a very good sense here because it has a very high frequency when it comes to the shocking aspect. And you might wonder now, wait a second, if you're doing bosses, for example, how do you want to make sure that your Stonebrand will actually inflict a good shock chance? So let's take a look at the tree, and let's take a look specifically at the Lightning Masteries, okay? So the Lightning Masteries are basically, for example, this one, increases and reduction to maximum mana, also applies to shock effect at 30% of their value. So in order to inflict the shock, we actually have to hit a decent amount, a certain percentage of the monster to inflict the shock. First of all, if it's a non-crit build, you need chance to shock unless you're an elementalist, but still your hit has to be high enough, and then based on your hit, it will then decide how big is the shock. Okay, not every shock is going to be 50% more damage taken by the enemy. It's just based on how hard you hit. And since I plan to run a 6-link Lightning Conduit, I only will have a 4-link Stonebrand. So how can we make sure to inflict decent shocks? And this is by stacking shock effect. For example, I think I'm gonna write this down real quick just to give you guys a good example. This is like not the real stats, it's just a showcase on how this should work, okay? Let's assume the boss has like 10,000 life, for example, right? And if I hit it for like 10% of the life, which is basically 1,000 damage, it will inflict a shock based on like, let's say 20% shock, okay? As I say again, this is just like a showcase on, just showcasing how this thing works, okay? So if we take another line, let's say I hit it for 2,000, then I maybe inflict like a 30% shock, right? Which is 20%. So the higher the actual hit is, the more percentage life one hit takes away, the higher the shock is going to be. The shock basically is 50% baseline, okay? And with shock, there is another mastery. This is going to get changed, but your shocks can increase damage take up to 60%, which hires the maximum shock from 50 to 60, but the new revamped one is going to be 15 maximum shock, okay? So it's going to be a 65% shock. So how am I able to actually inflict the 65% shock? I need to hit the monster very, very hard, or you stack shock effect. Because what shock effect is doing is lowering the threshold. That means if we do this again, if I lower the threshold because I have so much shock effect, then my 1000 hit will not inflict a 20%, it maybe is going to inflict a 40% shock just because we have so much effectiveness. So basically, it lowers the hit that I have to do to reach the thresholds of the shock, okay? And the plan is not to make Stonebrand hit insanely hard. I just want to stack immense amount of shock effect to reduce the threshold. So why do I need those big shocks? Obviously, we go back to the Lightning Conduit, which says 10% more damage with hits per 5% shock. And based on my calculation, if we do have a 65 shock on the monster, divided by 5 is 13 times 10, we're gonna have a 130% more damage on my Lightning Conduit, which therefore is a tactical nuke. If we go then to something like Overcharge, which is something I want to build in on my Stonebrand, because what it says, supported skills shock enemies as though dealing 690% more damage, okay? What that means is it's not that the brand will do 700 or 690% more damage, it's going to be that the threshold will be calculated as you would deal like 700% more damage, which therefore lowering this one again, okay? So then my 10% damage hit will actually apply like a 65% shock because it's capped if I have the Lightning Mastery. So you basically get the idea that I want to stack like enormous amounts of shock effect to get like my Stonebrand to inflict very high shocks or maximum shocks even on bosses to then nuke the boss with the Lightning Conduit. Okay, next step. What about the defensive aspect of the build? Obviously, it's going to be Mind Over Matter, which is now buffed to 40%. Is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? In this POB, it's still like 30%, but it's going to be 40%. Is this a buff? Technically, yes. In the Mind Over Matter Keystone aspect, it is a buff. But is it a buff overall? No, sadly not. Or at least it's something in between, because therefore, for buffing Mind Over Matter, they are going to remove, to annihilate all the Mind Over Matter, or at least, yeah, the Mind Over Matter mods on the body armor. For example, if we take a look at one of the core items, if you want to say it, this is the Cloak of Defiance, right? Let me quickly pull this one up, Cloak of Defiance, here we go. So this basically gives you Mind Over Matter, and 10% of damage is taken from mana before life. So you're gonna have 30% from Mind Over Matter plus 10 from the Cloak of Defiance. This line here is gone, okay? The same way if you used a rare chest, I think it was a Shaper or a Crusader mod or something like that, that was an elevated mod with like 15% MOM, and then on top of that you could get Mind Over Matter stat as the X-Arc implicit, okay? So you reach like a 55 or 50% Mind Over Matter. With this revamp, we're gonna be settled down on 40%. Unless you're like Hierophant or Scion or something like that, right? I think here is another like 8% MOM built in. But what I want to say is we're gonna have less MOM effect, but therefore we have an opened up chest which we can get more power out of that in the form of like the Lightning Coil as another form of layer of defense, or an Impulsor, or I don't know, like other things, right? So yes, it is good since we get a new armor piece, but it's also bad since we cannot reach enormous amounts of Mind Over Matter, unless we're gonna take items like the Mind of the Council, okay? So Mind of the Council is one of the coolest helmets in my opinion, which is something I used on my Burning Arrow Mind Over Matter Agnostic Raider, okay? It says attack skills have added lightning damage equal to 6% of maximum mana, so it gives us flat lightning damage to our attacks. But hey MBX, you said you're gonna play Stonebrand, what is this an attack? And this is where I said it's about the puzzle pieces that I try to fit together, right? Because why I actually want to take this helmet is this line over here, that one above, which says 30% of lightning damage is taken from mana before life. What that means is that we, against lightning damage, we actually gonna have a 70% MOM before, or at least instead of the base 40%. So what this is gonna mean, if we're gonna go here, just open a new thing over here. So we have 40% MOM against fire, right? So we're gonna copy paste this a couple of times. We have 40% against cold. We have 40% against lightning, and against fizz, and against chaos. Okay, this is the core mind over matter. So if I say that this helm gives me 30% lightning damage taking as from mana, means we're gonna have a 70% MOM against lightning damage. So you now would say like, yo, but this is just against lightning damage. What about all the other sources, right? And this is where the fun fact of this build comes in, right? The next item that I want to use is Font of Thunder. So Font of Thunder is an item that nobody ever uses, okay? This is actually a heist drop unique, and what it says, 40% of cold damage is taken as lightning damage, and 40% of fire damage is taken as lightning damage. Now we're gonna get there, right? So this is the first thing. So now we're gonna have like fire and cold damage taken as lightning, while lightning has a substantial amount of more mind over matter effect, okay? What is the next part is actually Divine Flesh, okay? And Divine Flesh says 50% of ally damage taken as chaos damage, okay? And wait, Divine Flesh PoE. So I will actually just copy this one over here. All damage taken bypass energy shield. Does this care? Does this bother us? No, not really, because we are playing Mind of like Agnostic, and Agnostic removes all of our energy shield. Doesn't affect us. 50% of elemental damage is taken as chaos damage, which is the next part. So, you know, since we're just having like, okay, wait. How do I explain this the best way? We're gonna focus on lightning and chaos res, okay? This is the two things that we actually want to have. So actually I'm gonna put this one a little bit lower here, so you're gonna see what's gonna happen, right? But the more important thing, ally damage is taken as chaos, which that means 50% of cold damage. We're gonna put this over here. Here we're gonna put fire damage again. So now we have the 50% of the Divine Flesh taken as chaos damage, okay? And as you see, we already have 90% of fire and cold damage converted. And then to top it all off, we're gonna use the Sublime Vision. And now you're gonna understand why I say this is not really League Starter viable. But what the Sublime Vision does with Purity of Lightning, 30% of fire and cold damage is taken as lightning damage, okay? So we're gonna move this over here. And now we have another 30%. Actually copy paste this over here, 30 as lightning damage. Actually put this over here. Good. And that means that we have a total of 40, 70, 100, 20% of fire and cold taken as either taken as lightning / chaos. What that means is we do not have fire and cold damage anymore, okay? This falls off. But therefore, we're still gonna have a massive amount of more lightning damage taken, which therefore we have a way bigger, mind over matter effect against lightning. So what's left is basically physical damage and the chaos damage. Next on the list would be the Lightning Coil. And the Lightning Coil is a very old unique, which says 30% of physical damage from hits taken as lightning damage. With that getting buffed to 50%, okay? So the new version of this will actually have 50%, if I copy pasta this again, help, boom, 50% of physical damage taken as lightning damage. And as we all know, lightning damage, we have a bigger MOM shield, okay? So as you see, we're gonna have ridiculous amounts of conversion going on. We're gonna have absolutely no fire and no cold damage taken. Therefore, for example, if I open my PUB over here, this is like my League Start plan, or I think it was the new creator over here that is just a one link, right, just to test it out, because I still want to get like an attack skill in because of the Mind of the Council, right? So it might be Kinetic Bolt, it might be even Hex Blast Ignite, Arc Ignite, it might be anything in between, or just Stormbrand with the Lightning Coil. This is still like the last couple of pieces. But as you see, I'm currently running negative fire and cold resistance because, hey, I don't take fire and cold resistance. All I do is stacking lightning res and chaos res. And as you see on my effective hit pool, we are like so freaking tanky with thousands of life regen per second if I go the way that I planned it over here, right? And yeah, there's still like some things to figure out here. I'm gonna try to make like a wonder version to still have the possibility to actually have my nuke button for bosses or anything like that. And we're gonna see how it turns out. So now you understand how ridiculous this might actually be with stacking mana and actually getting ridiculous amounts of shock effect thanks to my mana, as well as just trying to incorporate the new things with new layers of defense and with new layers of offense. Is Raider gonna be the right choice? I don't know. The reason why I want to go Raider is because Facing, is because Onslaught, is because Exposure, maybe Frenzy Charge if I don't gonna go the Onslaught route, because there is another unique item. It's called the Dance of the Offered, which is the previous version of the Omeokan boots or whatever they're called, and they give you permanent Onslaught as well as the Agnostic, which would actually save me quite some points on the left side, and therefore I could actually opt in for like the Frenzy route in the form of triggering. And that's the next big point that I'm trying to figure out. What if we can trigger the Lightning Coil as being a form of Herald of Thunder? Okay, this would be the dream. And there are certain ways to do that. It could be through cast on crit would be an option. It could be a cast when damage taken setup that would auto trigger the Lightning Conduit, so I don't have to like permanently play like the Essence Drain Contagion playstyle with 2 buttons. It could be a Spellslinger setup. It could be anything that triggers. But the problem that I have is, can I just go for a Spellslinger setup since I'm having a wand in my current version? Does this make sense? Yeah, it does. But don't forget, we're playing Mind Over Matter Agnostic. I cannot reserve anything on my life, otherwise Agnostic will permanently drain me. And I cannot really reserve anything on my mana either, because first of all auras are disabled based on the Sublime Vision. But in the other hand, if you play an Archmage or Mind of the Council build and you wanna spend mana, the more mana you have, the more damage you're gonna do based on your your Arcane Cloak, for example, right? So if you are going to play a 6-link Spellslinger, I can guarantee you the thing will just reserve 80% of your mana, and I don't really want to reserve, let's say if I have a mana pool of like 10,000, I don't want to reserve 80% of my mana and then be left alone with a tiny little bit of Mind Over Matter effect, right? So I think in the worst case, in the early stages, we still have to go from the early stages, right? Is this version possible to play early on? No, it is not. I'm not going to have Supreme Vision. I'm not going to have Forbidden Flame Flash. I'm not going to have Divine Flash. I'm not going to have the Font of Thunder. I'm not going to have a majority of the things, right? So that's why I'm going to start with like Stonebrand, just a typical version as I had it, just with like maxed out lightning resistance. And after a couple of days grinding, we're going to opt in one piece and another to trying to figure out this entire thing. But when it comes to like, is it going to be attack based? Is it spellcaster? Is it going to be Archmage? Is this like, the core thing here is there's a template build, right? So at some point I'm going to say like, yo, I'm going to go to the vendor, I'm going to buy the gems, because swapping a couple of gems and maybe a couple of skill points to try out different ways of playing the build is just a matter of like testing. It's not gonna like screw up the entire build because the core will still be the same. But yeah, there is way more things to like trying out and to figure out, and I don't know, this actually is going to be quite interesting the way it's maybe gonna play out or maybe not. And I think I'm gonna keep you guys updated on it, but this is going to be what I'm going to try to league start. And if you want to tag along, feel free to do so. I would say very risky, because I don't even know if we even gonna have the power to defeat a map boss. Maybe, I don't know. Alright guys, I think that's it for today's spoiler league start video of MBX. Another like classic MBX build with like 10,000 mechanics and 10 keystones and I don't know, and a hybrid attack Archmage build kind of thing. It's actually gonna be fucking terrible, but hey, there's a chance, and if there is a chance, I might go for it. Alright guys, thanks for tuning in, thanks for watching, and see you on the next video.